Story 1. Am I the a-hole for calling out my kid's future stepmom for treating me like a surrogate? I, 29 female, dated a guy, Joe, 30 male, for 3 months before he left me to go back to his ex, Kim, 30 female. Right after we broke up, I found out I was pregnant, and now I'm at 24 weeks. I let him know, and he was ecstatic. Turns out his girlfriend had fertility issues and would likely never be able to get pregnant naturally, and he has always wanted to be a father. Getting back together was out of the question for both of us, so he's still with his girlfriend. Joe was only allowed at the initial appointment because of COVID-19, and we found out I was having twins. According to Joe, when he told Kim, she had a mental breakdown about her infertility and wanted to talk to me. I met them at their house, and Kim stated that she wanted to be involved in my pregnancy because she would eventually be the children's stepmother. She started telling me that I needed to do a home birth, that I needed to formula feed so that they could have the babies half the week, that she wanted one boy and one girl, and that she wanted the kids to call her mama since they would be calling me mommy. I shut her down and said I would make the best choices for my children and my body, and left. Kim continued to be overbearing and texting me every day about my eating habits, exercise habits, and whining about how her job wouldn't let her take maternity leave. At the virtual genetics counseling appointment, she attended instead of Joe and took over the whole meeting trying to talk about her family history, which wasn't relevant. When it came time for my 20-week level 2 scan, they allowed me one guest, and Joe suggested I take Kim instead of him, which I refused to do. Joe did end up coming, and he found out the gender because I wanted to keep it a surprise for me so we could throw a gender reveal party. I put a pregnancy announcement on my social media, and then she put up an announcement saying they were expecting twins the non-traditional way, and how blessed she was. I was irritated, but I kept my mouth shut. Then she threw a gender reveal party and posted it on social media. I wasn't even invited. She also announced that she's having a baby shower. I commented on her posts and told her to stop treating me like a surrogate, that the kids weren't hers, and that Joe didn't have any claim or custody of the kids until they were born. I then called Joe and reiterated all of this and stated that I would not be seeing either of them until we went to family court and that my mother would be my birthing partner. He and Kim and some of her friends and family are saying I'm an a-hole, and her mother even called and insisted I give her one of my babies like this is the Parent Trap. So am I the a-hole? Edit. I am definitely getting a lawyer ASAP. Y'all have scared the smeg out of me, but I'm happy you did. Update. I never considered that this could have happened on purpose. We used condoms because I do not react well to hormonal birth control, and I had to wait to get a non-hormonal IUD because of other medical issues. This Thursday, I posted this. I went to the police, and they stated that there was nothing they could do because a crime hadn't been committed. In my state, orders of protection are criminal or family, so I was able to get one against Joe. On Friday, I did get a lawyer, and they let me know in my state there was nothing I could do as far as custody before the babies are born. So I will be leaving my state soon to ensure that this isn't my baby's home state, and I can't be charged with anything. However, someone sent this post to Kim, and she came to my job, damaged my car, and broke a bunch of office windows. I work with kids, so she was arrested for not just the criminal damage and trespassing, but also child endangerment, so hopefully that works in my favor. Also, if Joe did it on purpose, I don't think Kim knew, because she was screaming at me about how I stole her life and everything I had was supposed to be hers. Edit. I have orders of protection against both Kim and Joe. I left the state anyway, and Joe and Kim started harassing me again because there's no legal jurisdiction when you leave the state. But I have enough evidence that I was able to press charges in my current state as well, and will be pursuing a restraining order here. Just a big mess. No, they were really demanding. Kim more than anything, but yeah, they were really just assuming a lot. There was no discussion about how this should be. Kim was just so desperate to be a mother, she was just willing to do whatever. It was a woman that seems to be reinforcing all the ideals of The Handmaid's Tale, in this case. Scary.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 2. Today I fracked up by stuffing my face with edibles before dinner with my wife's parents. Oh, recently I traveled to Denver, Colorado with my wife and my wife's parents. As a resident of a non-legalized state, and as someone who is too much of a wuss to regularly buy illegal substances, the thing I was looking forward to most was the chance to buy fancy legal weed. What could possibly go wrong? So the first thing I do upon arriving, and after successfully ditching the in-laws, is drag my wife to a nearby dispensary for a shopping spree. And oh my deity, it was just like in my dreams. Tons of different options and neat little sample jars, and a team of helpful stoners walking me through the various strains. Are you looking for a mellow body, or do you want something that gives you a bit more pep and energy? Or are you just hoping for something light to take the stress off? Yes, yes, and yes, I reply eagerly, like a fat kid in a candy store, and request an 1/8 ounce of about 7 different options. In hindsight, if I learned anything from this experience, it's that my math and science teachers never taught me basic information. Like, what is an ounce? Or how much weed can a person consume in a single weekend? Sure, I can tell you when 2 speeding trains leaving separate stations will collide, or recite Avogadro's number, but it turns out that none of that information is particularly relevant to getting high in a responsible and efficient manner. And it was at this dispensary that I also learned that you can't actually smoke in public places, including the hotel that my wife and I were staying at. As a result, before leaving, I begged my wife to buy some edibles that I could munch on until we found a place to properly get lit. After expressing shock as to the absurd volume of substances that we were buying, unlike me, she's the product of private school and understands the imperial measurement system, she relents, and we walk out of the store with what feels like a dump truck of weed, plus a small package of seemingly innocuous ginger snap cookies. When we finally get back to the hotel room, I tear those bad boys open, only to find about a dozen tiny cookies, roughly the size of a quarter. What the hell, Denver? Seeing the skepticism and hunger in my eyes, my wife warns me that I should go easy and look at the back of the package first before trying one. Dose size: half a cookie. I read silently as I start taking microbites from the edges, like a giant chinchilla gnawing on a sunflower seed. But what kind of savage only eats half a cookie? So a second later, I covertly pop the remainder into my mouth. And then I quickly stuff another 2 cookies in my mouth for good measure the moment my wife turns her back. We may not have legal weed back home, but I routinely devour an entire package of mulattoes in one sitting without breaking a sweat. Your move, tiny ginger snaps. About 30 minutes later, we're in the back seat of her parents' rental car on the way to dinner. And that's when things start to go belly up. My stomach growls, loudly and angrily. My wife looks at me with inquisitive eyes that seem to say, "Diarrhea?" But I merely clutch my tummy and mumble something about altitude sickness. "You didn't need a whole cookie, did you?" she asks, 10% in genuine concern and 90% in seething irritation. Of course not, I respond, avoiding eye contact for the remainder of the car ride. A few minutes later, we're climbing out of our parents' rental car and heading into some trendy farm-to-table restaurant. I don't remember how I made it to my seat, and I don't remember even looking at the menu, but I do remember the concerned look on the waiter's face as he asked me if I was doing all right. Keep it together, man, I say to myself. But my wife's sudden groan suggests that I may have also said that to the waiter. Things are going downhill fast. The waiter nods sympathetically, takes our orders, and then heads to the next table. The moment he walks away, my wife is staring daggers at me. I start to worry that the jig is up. You're sweating. From your entire face, she says with both pity and disgust. Not quite knowing what to do, I reach for my napkin and proceed to blot my cheeks, nose, neck, chin, and forehead. At this point, my wife's mom looks over at me with some concern. Are you all right? She asks kindly. Yeah, the food's just a bit spicy, I reply, far too quick to realize that we had literally just ordered and that there is nothing on the table except for a basket of dinner rolls. My wife kicks me under the table to grab my attention. Bathroom, now, she hisses. Get it together. I reluctantly get up from the table and head for the toilet. After splashing several handfuls of water on my face, I approach a urinal and start to pee. Now, one of the more disconcerting effects of those tiny ginger snap monsters is the feeling that time has become untethered from reality. As I'm peeing, I start to get the very unsettling feeling that I have been taking a pee for the better part of an hour, and that my wife must be pacing around the restaurant worried about me. But deep down, I know that's absurd. I've been peeing all my life, sometimes multiple times a day. I've probably taken more than 50,000 leaks, and it usually only takes about a minute at most. So given that my typical pee is no more than 60 seconds, and given that I feel like I'm about halfway done, that means that I've probably only been standing here about 30 seconds, right? But the guy at the urinal next to me doesn't respond, and instead starts shuffling away from me midstream like a startled penguin. I try, albeit unsuccessfully, to break eye contact. After finally finishing, I again splash some water on my face and return to my seat, making sure to apologize to the table for being gone such a long time, just in case my math was off. Next, I try briefly to engage in small talk with my wife's father, but I am far too high to understand what either of us are saying. Not wanting to start laughing uncontrollably at the wrong moment, or really at any moment, I figure the safest idea is to nod my head periodically and drink a ton of water. Nothing cures mental fatigue like water, right? To my wife's horror, I stand up, grab my water glass, and thrust it out to the waiter, who unfortunately is on the opposite side of the restaurant. But he turns out to be really cool, and after making his way over to our table, tells me that he'll do his best to keep me stocked with ice water for the rest of the meal. He also helpfully suggests that if the dinner rolls aren't too spicy for me, I should probably eat one or two so that I'm not sitting there on an empty stomach. Smart man. However, after going through all of the bread on the table and 3 glasses of water, I start to get worried that I need actual food to offset the growing paranoia from those tiny ginger snap devils. Do you think I should flag down the waiter again and ask what's taking so long? I suggest helpfully to my wife. What? We literally just ordered 3 fracking minutes ago. And in that exchange, my wife loses her cool. How many cookies did you eat? She demands. Whoa, easy there, Torquemada, I responded, somewhat horrified at her outburst. I had a few cookies, but I kept them down. I don't want your parents to know how fracked up I am right now. Really? They're sitting 2 feet away from you. They know. I look up, and for the first time, notice both of my in-laws just staring at me. for what literally felt like an eternity. Oh, this guy just had one thing on his mind, and it was not meeting his wife's parents, or not meeting with the wife's parents. Was this meeting with the wife's parents for the first time? Or is this before they got married? I have to look up at this, but meet the parents first. And just be with the parents first. Then do what you gotta do afterwards with the edibles. And follow the directions. It's a good thing this person wasn't taking medication for anything, or even NyQuil. I wonder if he follows the dosages on that kind of stuff as well. Story 3. Won't compensate me for my fence? Then compensate me 100 times as much for my crops. The malicious compliance in this story is not mine. It's my brother-in-law's. Some of the details may be slightly off, but the overall story is true. My brother-in-law grows avocados in California. Several years ago, a portion of his ranch was ravaged by a wildfire, or so he thought at first. When the smoke cleared, it became obvious that the fire was caused by an electrical line that was blown over by strong winds and had landed on his fence, catching it on fire. Since he had been planning on diversifying his crops anyway, he decided he'd simply replace his fence, replant, and move on. To that end, he called up the electric company that owned the down line and asked them for about $10,000 in compensation to replace the fence that had been destroyed by the electrical line. They denied any and all culpability in the matter and told them that he should sue them if he didn't like it. What the electric company didn't realize was that my sister, his wife, works full-time as a corporate attorney for one of the largest utilities in California, defending against cases just like this one. At first, she was concerned that this utility was a subsidiary of her employer, in which case there would be a massive conflict of interest. Apparently, legal departments frown on their employees when their husband is suing them. Go figure. Thankfully, after some investigation, she realized that the utility in question was completely independent of her employer, and at that point, the gloves were off. My sister didn't represent her husband because she's typically on the other side of these cases, but she did advise him on everything he needed to bring to court to win this case. And she helped him find a very reputable lawyer with a solid record of winning cases like these. Not knowing what they were up against, the utility persisted in refusing to negotiate, hoping that by forcing my brother-in-law to trial, he would simply give up and go away. Spurred on by my sister's insistence that he had a solid case, he called their bluff and went to trial. As it turns out, California takes agricultural damage very seriously, and the court conducted its own independent investigation. It estimated the total damages at around $335,000, which is over 33 times as much as my brother-in-law had asked for initially. Furthermore, there is a law in California that awards triple damages in cases where agriculture is impacted. So the utility that had been unwilling to negotiate $10,000 was now on the hook for over $1 million in damages. When all was said and done, my brother-in-law confided to me that he would have gladly settled for the $10,000 in arbitration, and that it would probably have taken him over a decade to even sell $1 million worth of crops. The utility had to have their day in court, though. So you've got a little extra money as a safety net and cushion. Maybe, indulge in a little something. Maybe buy a PS5 or something. Who knows? Just glad that he was able to get something for this. And these people, the company, should have done their research, found those connections. They had no idea who they were up against. They didn't do any research on the family at all. You love to see it. You love to see utility companies be held responsible.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.